The original impetus for making this video was reacting to a rather insipid article in which the author wanted to make up her mind on whether or not she should be offended by the game Catherine after all these years. However, I learned an interesting little bit of news teasing the possibility either of a direct sequel, a spiritual successor, something being done with this whole Golden Playhouse thing, which frames the game at the beginning and the end of any particular playthrough, no matter in the story mode anyway. And so I thought, hey, let's just do a little rundown of the game and review my thoughts on it. Now, of course, like I said, the game doesn't actually start with the plot as we're introduced to the Golden Playhouse. It's with our host, the Midnight Venus, Trisha. Sort of like the Elvira or Vampira. You've seen spoofs of these hosts and stuff like Gremlins 2 and the original Fright Night film. Their role is just saying hey to the audience, introducing, explaining the movie that plays that night, and I imagine talking about the sponsors. Then we get the tutorial section, just getting a rundown on how the game plays. So we got something because there's quite a bit of cutscene as we get a rundown of Vincent's life so far, the mysterious deaths, which seem to be afflicting various men throughout the city. Then there's Vincent's fateful encounter with Catherine the succubus, gal on the left in this image here, and that's when the nightmares really begin in earnest. Now, I just wanted to talk about Vincent himself, because he can be a little bit divisive. Now, Vincent himself, his work involves a lot of coding. It's a skill set, but the work itself is tedious, not a lot of prestige, and at work he gets stiffed a lot on pay. Smokes frequently, often drinks himself silly, especially when there's a serious situation he doesn't want to handle. Honestly, I think the main thing holding his relationship with Catherine, the girlfriend, the one on the right in the picture, thing holding that together, it's inertia, and I'd say to a degree a sense of obligation. I mean, doesn't want to go all in, doesn't want to let go. Now, part of that is, he's comes from a broken family. His folks split up when he was still fairly young, and the whole idea of a happy family, that's an alien concept to him. So he's pretty happy with the status quo. Like, they're together, but they're not together, you know what I'm saying? There's not the legal connections and whatnot. And so that's the situation so far. Then everything's in a kind of a limbo that Vincent's comfortable in, because there's very little required of him. Now, in the past, he did have some charm, bit of a rogue, had some leadership skills, but he was also pretty good-natured as a young man, but never really went anywhere with his life. And then Catherine shows I'm just going to call her the succubus, and then delineate from the girlfriend, because this saying the formal names, it's going to get confusing. So the succubus shows up. She is, a projection of Vincent's sort of not quite ideal, but it's like sort of like fantasy girls. I don't know, like the anima, if you will. Well, at least aesthetically, personality, she's playful but possessive. She's a pretty dangerous chick if you bring it all down. Yeah, I imagine when she wanted to go see that horror movie, she was going to point out all her relatives from the various monsters. Now, as for the girlfriend, I don't really see much anything wrong with her, really. She's pretty level-headed. I'm not 100% on whether or not she lied about the pregnancy to rope in Vincent. Really not sure either way. Even if she did, it's nowhere near as nasty as forgetting to use her birth control and trapping him with a baby. And while this herbivore man thing gets brought up a lot in talking about the game, the fact that Vincent, believes Catherine the girlfriend, when she says she's pregnant, that says to me, they've been doing it enough times, with enough regularity and recently enough for him to believe that, hey, that he could be a daddy. And later on in the game, when the girlfriend confronts Vincent about his cheating ways, she's pretty level-headed. She's very sane about it. She really, she's upset with him. She's disappointed, but it's nowhere near the soap opera that unfolds in his previous dream. Vincent, the bosses were often some variation of his girlfriend, and yet that nightmare creature is product of Vincent's imagination and doesn't really reflect the girlfriend at all. But my big criticism here is that, in the absence of having a baby, she's basically treating her man like a kid. It's like and I'm not saying a woman shouldn't be nice to her man, but your man and your baby are two different things. That just infantilizing him. That's no good for anyone. That's just my thing. However, everything comes to a head. Girlfriend dumps Vincent for his cheating ways. Vincent tries to hem and haw about this, that, and the other, but she ain't having it. Then we discover that the owner of the bar is none other than Dumazid. He's known as Dumazid the Shepherd, consort of Ishtar. Also recorded apparently one of the kings before the deluge. Well, when confronted by Vincent, he taunts him by mentioning that his machinations are the reason Vincent was born, because they killed the guy who was leading on his mother, and thus his father and mother and father met. That's a pretty heavy thing to drop on someone, and when you try. Now, the gods apparently want these fruitful unions, but when you try to break down what they want and how they go about it, it's absolutely bananas. Now, one thing to note, love him or hate him, Vincent does tell Dumazid to let the other sheep go, the other victims of these machinations. It's going to be mano a mano. So he's got some basic decency there, no matter how you cut it, no matter his alignment, As for the other sheep, it's interesting, there's this common thread among them. There's dysfunction, whether it's infidelity, non-commitment for reasons, usually because they've been burned before. And you complete arcs of those who also frequent the stray sheep. It ends with them starting over. They're intending to get married at long last or to make their relationship work. And in the puzzle section itself, there's these other sheep that they're basically tutorial characters because they'll die their stupidity setting off traps, bombs, whatnot, or they're an enemy because they'll fuck up your puzzles. Because you gotta knock them out of the way, knock them over the ledge if you want to succeed. And whether you want to or not, you'll end up helping Dumazid and Ishtar with their eugenics scheme. Now, also in the puzzle, these ants show up. You're just looking for food or whatnot. Now, the ants, they genetically they're closer than brothers, and they'll fight and die for each other without a second thought, and they work till they expire in the service of their queen. If there's a deeper meaning of that, I'm not quite sure, but let's just tug on there's a simple brilliance to the game mechanics. The blocks will stay in place as long as one of their edges touches the edge of another block below them. They don't have to have a block directly under them to support the weight. There's a sort of a dream logic to it, but it allows for more creative solutions, and there's less clutter. It makes it more aesthetically pleasing, and it uses less data, so you don't have to worry about the game chugging along that often. It's been a while, so. Now, the continues, they're more for the benefit of the newbies, because just getting through the plot, you get from the top to the bottom, and they've got the checkpoints. But the true goal for in the long run is getting a perfect run. As you get these perfect runs, you access the other challenge sections. Now, for the endings, to get the optimal endings, it requires total commitment. It's not about right and wrong, conventional good and evil, more about knowing your nature, being true to it, and taking charge. Halfway devotion, whether it's the law or chaos types, you get the girl, but you're kind of still been led around by the short hairs. Yes. And there's the true freedom. Well, actually, now the Catherine ending, it resolves everyone's arcs in one way or another for the supporting cast, the main ones anyway. Whether it's what happens from there, who knows? What goes on with the next generation, whether the marriage really lasts. Vincent has the transformative experience, and even though the girlfriend herself, she's a good gal and all, but she didn't go through any arc as far as I can remember. Then there's the succubus ending. It's either you end up in a sitcom or an action RPG, and whether or not she's real or not, Vincent's living in fantasy land. Dumazid will say she's not real because it's kind of ambiguous how demons work in this game's universe. What constitutes reality. But either way, Vincent ends up in the demon world and having his trysts with the succubus. But then there's the true freedom end, which I think would be the most appropriate end if you had to pick a canon end one way or the other. Because it has these bookends. In the beginning of Vincent's story, you see this big poster. There's talk throughout the game about going into space, and in the True Freedom end, he does just that. He goes into outer space. And I think taking this path, this is where Vincent is trailblazing. He's finding a path for humanity outside the bizarre machinations of the gods. It also should be noted in the freedom endings, it reveals there's this arcade game in the bar, Rapunzel, which sort of has this Last Starfighter thing going for it, in that playing the game makes the subject more susceptible, easily dragged into the dream world, this nightmare stage where they solve puzzles, like in the arcade game itself. Regardless of the ending, it's closed off with Trisha, our Midnight Venus, commenting on games and sending off the player with a farewell. And some people say this is pretentious, as the game sort of gives away its meanings, the symbolism and whatnot, or because the game uses classical music. I don't know. I think this could be misdirection, or that Trish is genuinely impressed with video games, because then we get to the sort of the secret end. You get gold on all the stages and challenge Axis Mundi, and upon completing that challenge stage, Trisha reveals herself, letting her hair down, if you will, literally and figuratively, as she is the goddess Ishtar. Like the myth, she's tired of her disloyal man Dumazid and wants to trade him in for something better. The player is transubstantiated. He is to become one of the gods himself, and they're going to be begetting divine children. So that kind of leaves things a little ambiguous whether what's presented in the Golden Theater is, a real series of events, or if everything is a show. It gets me wondering, why is the game called Catherine? Obviously, after the succubus. It's good marketing. Look at Nier Automata. You can get people to play a game that makes them think, as long as you got a pretty girl on the cover, and sex appeal sells. Could be misdirection. Actually, there's a parallel with the Rapunzel arcade game in the extra scenario, where it's revealed that Rapunzel is bait to lure foolish men, and once the main character reaches the end, Rapunzel and the witch trade places, in which the witch will have the man for herself. And once one completes the game, the succubus, she lures in various men to play the game. And then once Ishtar finds a suitable mate, she switches in for the succubus. I think the bigger point to take from all of this is that whether the Golden Playhouse is a literal sequence of events or not, is that in the eyes of the gods, that human drama is a diversion, it's a show, as greater powers shape human events, even in the most intimate and minute details, such as who we fall in love with and start families with and all that. Humans can become something greater in this whole scheme, but we are their livestock. Dumazid was once a human, like Vincent and the other subjects, but in the end he is disposable. As once Ishtar is weary of him, he goes to the wayside. The normal ending, the normal cheater end, that shows Vincent, Catherine, and Dumazid himself all living together. So that could be his fate regardless of the ending, because Ishtar finds herself a new man. And that's pretty much my thoughts. Some impressions I've had of the game. It's just fun thinking about it. I want to play it again soon. See if I can get that gold on all the hard mode stages. Well, that's about all that comes to mind right off the top of my head. Thank you all for listening all this time. Have a nice day. Goodbye.